For 18 NFL teams, including the Seattle Seahawks, the 2025 offseason begins today. What's going on, everybody? Good morning. It's Monday. Technically, it is Victory Monday. Doesn't necessarily feel like it, I know. But regardless, I would rather go into this offseason on a Victory Monday than a Hangover Monday, especially when the victory and the hangover really wouldn't have changed anything beyond just the one game. By the time our game started, it was pretty clear that our draft pick could not be moved. So even if you care about stuff like that, there was no value there. So the only real impact of that win was Geno Smith got $2 million more, which, look, the contract's the contract. If he earns it, he earns it. And I mean, we won 10 games, so he earned it. So I'd rather go into the offseason with a win than a loss, especially because losing that game yesterday would have been embarrassing. But regardless of whatever happened yesterday, the season didn't end in the place that we wanted it to end. Now, most seasons don't end where you want them to end if you're a fan of a sports team. Let's be real here. There are 32 teams and only one team can win the Super Bowl. So you very rarely end where you want to be. But now we have to go into this offseason and figure out what we need to do to take that next step to become one of the contenders. Because contrary to what some people might say, there's really nothing a football team can do or any sports team can do that can guarantee a Super Bowl or guarantee a deep playoff run. All you can do is make yourself a contender and then hope things break your way at the end of the season. That's it. So, with that being said, the work starts now. And don't expect a lot of stuff to happen over the next few days, except for maybe a coaching firing or two. But the work does start now. So we got the NFL.com operations off-season calendar on screen here. And you can see that today, January 6th, is actually an important date for some off-season stuff. It is, of course, the first day after the regular season, so you would expect some things to be considered. And the point I'm trying to make here is that work is going to start quickly, and throughout this whole offseason, I'm going to help guide you through it. So if you are a Seahawks fan, don't go anywhere. If you are a Seahawks fan, I'm going to be making videos consistently throughout the entire offseason. I can tell you that in all likelihood, January and February and March are going to be at least a couple videos a day. And I understand that there's not going to be a ton happening, but we need a prep. We need a prep for free agency in late March, and we need a prep for the draft in late April. And there's a lot that goes into that. So right away, we're going to take a look at some of the futures contracts the Seahawks hand out. You're probably going to see those come down in the next couple of days here. There are going to be some players that this team wants to kind of earmark to keep around for the 2025 season, but they don't want to offer them a contract with any guaranteed money. So there's these things called futures contracts that give them the opportunity to bring them back next year without guaranteeing them anything against the salary cap. So for a lot of these players, getting a futures contract is about the best you can hope for. If you're somebody like a Quinton Bohanna, if you're somebody like a Brandon Pilley, if you're somebody who is on that level where you're just barely hanging on to a practice squad or the back end of the roster, that's about the best you can do. So we're going to start seeing some futures contracts. I'll make a video about it whenever we get information about that. And the next couple days, we could see some coaching moves. Now, the important part when you're making coaching changes is you need to let the coaches go in time so that you're able to sift through the market of coaches as much as possible. If you wait a couple of months to fire a coach, then the guys you might have wanted to replace that coach have already been hired. So if we plan on firing Ryan Grubb, if we plan on firing Jay Harbaugh, if we plan on firing anybody, it should happen in the next few days. And if it doesn't happen in the next few days, it would be reasonable to assume that it's just not going to happen. So those are going to be the first couple of things that hit. Maybe this team signs a couple of players to a non-futures contract, like a normal contract for the 2025 season. I doubt it, but if that happens, we'll talk about it. And we might see some contract extension talks. Don't expect anything to happen yet. Like, I think Charles Cross will get extended this offseason for sure, but it might not happen in January. It might not happen for months. Could be quite a while. So if we hear stuff about it, I'll talk about it. Maybe we'll exercise some fifth-year options. Maybe that'll come into play for a player like a Charles Cross or even a Boye Mafe. Well, actually, it couldn't be Boye Mafe. Excuse me. He was a second-round pick. But it could happen to a guy like a Charles Cross. So that's the stuff that you can anticipate over the next few days. But that's just a taste of what's to come. Obviously, we want to get through the rest of these playoffs. If the Seahawks decide to move on from a coach or two, then we need to talk about replacements. Like, I can tell you right now that if Ryan Grubb is let go, and as of right now, as of me recording this video, I believe that he will be, but I'm not sure of it, of course. I think that there's a lot to talk about in regard to a replacement. And I'm going to make many, many videos going through that if it happens. If it doesn't happen, then there's nothing to talk about. But what that does give us an opportunity to do is instead start taking an early look at free agency, because we already know the players that are not under contract for the upcoming 2025 season. We already know who's going to be out there. So we've got the rest of January, we've got all of February, and then we've got March until about, March 10th. That's when free agency opens this year. So we've got basically 9 weeks, approximately 9 weeks, to start talking about who's going to be available, what makes sense for the Seahawks to do. That's plenty of time. So while we're doing that, we're also going to talk about the current Seahawks roster. Who are the guys who need to be let go? Who are the guys who need to be re-signed? Who do we need to restructure? Who do we need to extend? What does the salary cap look like? What are the different paths the team can take? There's a lot that we can get into. So just because football is done does not mean the content stops. The off-season is not really an off-season. It's just you don't get to watch the team play football. And I know for some people, that's a little bit of a deal breaker. But things are going to start flowing very fast here. If we need a new OC, then I'll have probably a couple dozen videos about that. If we don't, then I'll probably just open things up right with discussion about salary cap stuff and the current state of the roster and decisions that need to be made. And then as we get into late January and February, we'll crack open the free agency list, try to find the guys that are worth pursuing, get a feel for who might be targeted and where and when. And all the while, we'll have the backdrop of the playoffs going on. Definitely going to be some intriguing stuff there. It's not like last year, though. Last year, we were looking for a new head coach, and we knew that it was very likely our next head coach was going to be somebody who was coaching in the playoffs. So that was very interesting to see that play out. Not necessarily the case this year. I guess we could be potentially looking for an OC or a special teams coach from a playoff team, but it's not going to hit quite the same. But regardless, you go through this list, you can see all the stuff that's going to happen in the offseason, right? I've talked about this stuff before. I think most of you guys know, but you've got all this draft stuff that's going to start happening in February with the scouting combine. We love the scouting combine, right? Don't we? You've got, of course, the free agency stuff. You've got the pre-draft stuff. We've got the actual draft itself. You've got plenty of stuff to fill an offseason. And we are probably not going to slow down until June, really, when you think about it. Because, like I said, January is going to be January and February and March is all about salary cap, roster stuff, free agency, and maybe a coaching search. That's months worth of content. And then you have the draft. That's, if anything, we don't have enough time to talk about all the stuff we need to talk about with the draft. And then after the draft, you have to actually talk about the draft that you just had. And by the time you're done with all that, suddenly it's late May, early June. So don't go anywhere. Expect daily videos, expect typical content, and expect a little bit of a change in the way I'm doing things as well. There is an announcement that I'm going to be making in the very near future here. Probably a video in the next, maybe later today, maybe tomorrow. But I do have a little bit of a fun announcement, a cool announcement of a slight change in the way I'm going to be doing content for the 2025 year. So keep an eye out for that. I don't want to say anything more, but some cool stuff is happening. But yeah, starts today. We still have a few more videos that we're going to get out about that final game. And it's going to be an opportunity to step back and take a look at the 2024 season as a whole. I still want to get those videos out. The snap count stuff, PFF stuff, coverage stats, pass rush stats. I value that stuff. But I know for most people, we're here. We're done. The off-season's here. I don't know how many people really care about pass rush stats at this point. This season's over. But the show goes on regardless. So I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Off-season's here, but the content is not stopping. I don't think we're taking a break until we get to somewhere around June, personally. All right, everyone have a good day. PFF videos coming later. Snap count video coming later. You guys know the drill. And go Hawks.